The Heavenly Demon. Can't Live a Normal Life. By Sanchin. Chapter 117. While Staying in the Capital. Part 1. The war with Hector was over. Upon hearing the news of Roman Dimitri's return to the capital, Hans asked for Baron Romero's approval and headed to the capital right away. Even during that time, he wasn't fully aware of Roman's achievements. Baron Romero was worried about his son and hoped Hans would take care of him. So Hans was able to arrive in the capital. As he was cleaning the accommodation given by the royal family in advance, he suddenly met someone. Young Master Lauren? Hans. It was Lauren Dimitri. He entered the estate with a youthful face, lingered around Hans, and asked a few things. At first, it was about how the family was. Is father all right? Is mother doing well? Hans knew Lauren Dimitri had already contacted his family a few days ago. The child should have known it. Still, he waited for him to bring up the topic first. After a long, meaningless conversation, Lauren Dimitri spoke in a cautious voice, but Hans. Yes? Did anything special happen to Brother Roman when I was away? No, Brother Roman never had any interest in swordsmanship, but now I just saw him return to the capital, being escorted by guards. According to the people, Brother Roman defeated a ranker of the Hector kingdom. He hesitated a lot when speaking. He didn't believe it. Despite witnessing it with his own eyes and hearing it himself, Lauren Dimitri couldn't accept that Roman had changed. Hans answered. A lot of things happened to young Master Roman when young Master Lauren left. I think that rumors must have spread too. The marriage with the Lawrence house was broken off, and a war was waged by the Barco house. He defeated Homer, and this time he went to the southern front and made impossible things happen. The people who knew young Master Roman might think of it as a lie, but all of that isn't filled with even an inch of a lie. Is that real? Yes. Would I lie to the young master? Thanks to the changed path of young Master Roman, Lord Romero has been happy these days. Why not meet him in person instead of talking like this? I heard that he would come here in the evening. If you meet him in person, you will be able to see how he has changed. At Hans's suggestion, Lauren averted his gaze. No, it is fine. He had a puzzled expression. He said he was fine, but he was constantly observing Hans' reaction and was hesitating to say something else. Finally, Lauren didn't state his purpose. Hesitating till the end, he left and told Hans he had work to do. Hans had been with Dimitri for many years. Most of the time, he had devoted himself to Roman, but over the years, he knew the inclinations and behaviors of the other young masters too. Something is wrong. Lauren Dimitri was a gentle-hearted person. The three sons of Dimitri were born with different characters. Roman and Rodwell got their father's fieriness and temperament, but Lauren Dimitri grew up differently from the two due to their father's desire to have a daughter. Thus, he was like his mother. He was careful and never acted hastily, but sometimes he would turn timid, which made others a bit frustrated. Hans noticed it. If Lauren Dimitri had come to visit him, he must have been going through something serious. So he looked into it. After investigating the academy, it wasn't difficult to find out what was troubling Lauren Dimitri. With this information, Hans reported to Roman. It seems like young Master Lauren is being bullied by his classmates at the academy. Even in the old days, young Master Lauren would fall down and break his knee or scrape it, but not once had he said anything about being in pain. However, such a person came to me and asked about you, young Master Roman. I think he wanted to ask for help, but I didn't have the liberty to ask what the problem was. The Royal Academy. He had heard of it. It was a gateway that must be passed in order to succeed. All the nobles of Cairo enrolled their kids in this academy. The academy was a gathering place for future lords, and it dealt with all issues concerning human relationships. The children of the central government nobles would openly discriminate against other nobles. Especially those who lived on the outskirts, such as the Dimitri family, were not even treated as nobles. However, it would be different if one's skills were proven, like Rodwell Dimitri, but Lauren Dimitri had no skills. The situation was obvious. Hans made the request in an earnest way without deliberately mentioning the sensitive issue. Young master. This might seem presumptuous, but could you please meet with young master Lauren? Meeting Lauren wasn't part of his plans. Roman would return to Dimitri after this, but he had to meet him unexpectedly. Lauren Dimitri, it is said he is the youngest one. He tried recollecting his memories. His relationship with Lauren wasn't bad. Even though Rodwell was the second son, he denied that Roman existed and made sure Roman had no rights. From then on, there was a conflict between the brothers. As a result of their fierce competition, Roman reached his limit first and fell into depression. On the contrary, Lauren had nothing to do with the competition for power. Regardless of the age difference, Lauren Dimitri followed the older brothers and showed no interest in power. I don't have to take care of him just because he is a younger brother. But they were still family. Based on the memories he had never experienced before, he wasn't affectionate with his younger sibling. But at least, as someone with the name Dimitri, he thought meeting once wouldn't be bad. He had to evaluate Lauren Dimitri. Baek Jung-hyuk was cruel to his brothers and killed anyone who threatened his life while he was ascending to the top. On the contrary, he readily accepted new connections, like Hans and Baron Romero, who gave him positive feelings. He wanted to meet Lauren so he could judge him in person. Just because he had Dimitri's name, Roman had no plans of helping Lauren. I understand. I will meet him. Young master. Hans smiled broadly. Roman thought that since this was Hans' request, he would grant it. While Roman was resting, someone was taking action. Recruiting Roman Dimitri has been postponed indefinitely. However, there is still a way to score points for Marquis Benedict. It was Count Fabius. He tried to get Roman on his side, but he couldn't believe what Roman said at the feast. Due to this, he came up with a new plan. People are all recruiting Roman Dimitri, but in fact, his subordinates are also formidable. It was frustrating at first. Dimitri is a family on the outskirts, and it is hard to find people as talented as them, even in the capital. If we can convince them, Marquis Benedict will surely be pleased. Count Fabius carefully observed the battlefield during the war. As soon as the order to help Roman was issued, his men slaughtered the enemies with an overwhelming force. Especially for Chris, his presence was amazing. He was once called the genius swordsman in Dimitri, and was considered a nameless man in the capital. However, seeing him slash down the Aura swordsman of Hector felt thrilling. No matter how much Count Fabius thought about it, Chris didn't seem much older than 20. In fact, while the other men didn't shine when Roman Dimitri defeated Butler, Chris showed growth that a man in his 20s wouldn't have. Chris had a talent that any noble would welcome with open arms. This is from my first-hand experience. If I hadn't gone down to the southern front myself, I would have thought that only Roman Dimitri was the gift that would please Marquis Benedict. Let's approach Roman step by step. Roman's men, including Chris, if I can bring them to our side, and slowly convince Roman, I might gain Marquis Benedict's trust in an instant. It was like killing two birds with one stone. He kept smiling and thought his plan was perfect. Why? They weren't Roman Dimitri, and guys like Chris could not turn down his offer. It was only a matter of time before he could convince Roman and his men. Roman gave Chris and his men a vacation. After the fierce war, they were all entitled to be paid and have some time to enjoy themselves. So the soldiers went their separate ways and enjoyed their break. Chris remained on the training ground alone. It was impossible for him to rest when he thought about the war. When I first met the Lord, he was clearly someone I could reach. So I promised myself that I would surpass him in a very short time, but in the same short time, the Lord managed to reach a different level than me. The battle with Butler was shocking. For most people, it was common sense for Roman to lose, but Chris believed that Roman would win, and as expected, Butler was brutally defeated. He was a 5-star swordsman, which the Hector kingdom was proud of. Such a man lost against Roman Dmitri, who wasn't much different from him half a year ago. How was that possible? He tried to understand it, but he couldn't think of an answer. What is certain is that I am developing rapidly with the Lord. I just need to look at the back of my Lord and follow him. I also experienced tremendous growth in the last half year. I still don't understand the situation I am in. The Lord is showing a speedy development which makes no sense, and all the knowledge he tells me is priceless. This wasn't knowledge that a family on the outskirts like the Baron's family should have. If the Dmitri family was a family of swordsmen, it was clear that they would have made a name for themselves as master swordsmen. It was Roman who made a name for himself. Roman Dmitri doubted the principle of aura and showed he had the talent to create a new world with the sword. His choice was right. He was convinced that he could develop much more by following Roman Dmitri, and he didn't want to stop at the little growth that he had. He knew the moment he showed negligence, Roman Dmitri would head into a world beyond his reach. The goal was to defeat him utterly. So, even though everyone had left for their vacation, he stayed behind at the training ground and swung his sword. And it was then. "Are you Chris?" It was a familiar voice. He turned his head. Count Fabius was looking at Chris with a friendly smile. Chapter 118. While staying in the capital. Part 2. There was no reason to drag the conversation any longer, so Count Fabius just stated his purpose. "I want to hire you, Chris. Let me know your conditions. I came here for you." "No need." He abruptly stopped talking. Fabius's face was contorted, and he focused his gaze away. "No, you didn't even listen to it. Well, I am acquainted with Marquis Benedict, the head of the nobles and the central government. Living in the Cairo kingdom, you cannot imagine how a great opportunity this is. This is your chance to change your life. What do you want? Money? Mr. Chris, we can give you money enough for you to live for the rest of your life. Honor? There is no other greater honor than serving Marquis Benedict in the Cairo kingdom. If you wish to become a noble in the future, the Marquis will personally grant you a title. Just say anything. There is nothing we cannot offer you in Cairo." He proudly said it. His words weren't lies. People might say that 3 people share power except for the puppet king, but in the Cairo kingdom, the grasp of Marquis Benedict was the strongest. It was a well-known fact that if you were living in Cairo, you needed to follow Marquis Benedict to enjoy a lot of privileges. One didn't have to be smart to know that. Count Fabius continued, "If you are concerned about betraying Roman Dmitri, do not worry about that. Roman Dmitri will always be a follower of Marquis Benedict. We are going to make sure that it happens. Would it be a problem if you joined us early? This is only a matter of precedence. Will you follow Roman Dmitri later and come to us, or join hands now and earn our trust? That is the difference." Smirk. Chris snickered at Count Fabius's proposal. If this was half a year ago, maybe there was a chance, but now, his mind wouldn't accept anything else. "How are you sure that my lord will come to Marquis Benedict? Isn't that obvious? Even in the Hector kingdom, no one can deny that man's power." It was funny that Count Fabius knew nothing about Roman Dmitri. The man Chris had been following wasn't the type to bow his head. Even if he had to join hands with a compromise, he would rather risk war than bow to someone. Chris was sure of Roman's statements that he would rise to the top of the continent. So the words of Count Fabius were wrong. Chris said, "No matter what the conditions are, I have no intention to leave the side of my lord. You say Marquis Benedict can do a lot for me, but I assure you that no one can give me another lord." With Roman's teachings and new worldly knowledge, he couldn't measure the value of what he had already received. Above all, Chris didn't want to make a choice that would disappoint Roman. Barco and Hector. At the time, everyone said that the other side was bound to win, but Roman made sure they were taken down with an overwhelming margin. What if Roman didn't choose Marquis Benedict? The possibility of standing on the other side of Roman at any point in time was something that shook away any temptation Chris could have. He was resolute, which left Count Fabius speechless. He was confident that he could recruit Chris and didn't expect such a backlash. If you say that, well. He took a step back. He wanted to express his fury and insist, but attacking the people of Roman without a plan wasn't good. While taking a few steps, Chris added, "If you want to convince my other colleagues, then just give up. No one will make a choice against the will of our Lord." Until then, Count Fabius really had no intention of listening to Chris. Chris was right. The next target was Kevin. Seeing him move like a ghost on the battlefield, he made the same suggestion. "But, do not ever make such offers to me again. To me, my Lord is everything in life. If the Lord says he will follow Marquis Benedict, I will lay my life down for him, but if I turn my back on him and force him to choose someone else, I'd rather just wish for death. Do not test me." He was pretty aggressive. Just the thought of Roman made the guy suppress his anger, and Kevin seemed quite annoyed at the offer. It didn't end there. The next targets were Pookie and Vulcan. They were mercenaries that shocked everyone, including him, with their exceptional skills. "Has this been discussed with the Lord? I have no intention of making a choice against my Lord. So I will pretend that this conversation never happened. Count Fabius, I am very well aware of your condition. However, if you are going to make the same offer to my other colleagues, I hope you will consider that our loyalty to the Lord isn't so light. Thank you for taking care of us, but if we hadn't met our Lord, we would be nothing, so we cannot imagine ever betraying him." Fabius made it clear to them that it wouldn't be a betrayal. Even though he told them it was just a matter of time before Roman joined, no one wanted to accept his offer. Finally, he thought that Henderson, the most common of the men, would react nicely, but the guy simply covered his ears and avoided his gaze. He completely ignored him and didn't respond to anything he said. How dare they not compromise with the nobles of Cairo? He didn't know. He thought that Roman Dimitri's men had been blessed with great talents, but in fact, as Roman's men said, they were all nothing if they hadn't met Roman. But, of course, Chris was gifted. However, Kevin and Henderson were commoners. Vulcan and Pookie were mercenaries who lived in wars, and they were all people who only grew because of Roman. In truth, Chris was the same. Only after following Roman did he become an interesting person to everyone. Count Fabius was shocked and looked blankly at the sky. "Why are you so loyal?" Suddenly he felt more curious about this man called Roman. At that time, Lauren Dimitri was still training during his break. Yoop. Tap. He clenched his teeth and struck at the dummy. He was projecting William Castor's image onto the dummy, and unlike the practice match, he was able to accurately aim for the vital points. He made clean and neat attacks. In real life, he was a mess, but in virtual battles like this, Lauren Dimitri had fairly strong sword movements. He was so busy training that even though the sun began to set, he didn't stop. Hook, hook. He was out of breath. His arms and legs were trembling, and his face was flushed red. He wanted to sit down, but when he remembered his conversation with Hans, he couldn't. How can I lie to the young master? Thanks to young Master Roman's changed behavior, Lord Romero has been happy lately. Why not meet him in person instead of just asking like this? I heard he will be coming here this evening. If you meet him in person, you can see how much young Master Roman has changed. Among those words, the one about his father being happy stuck in his mind. He was raised differently from him, who was born poor and suddenly became the son of a wealthy man. His brother, who was labeled trash and a fool, was now different, as if he were reborn. What happened to Brother Roman? Lauren trusted Hans. Hans wasn't a liar and knew Roman Dimitri better than anyone, so such rumors could not be false. But there was a limit to how much change people could accept. The Roman whom Lauren remembered was an irreparable idiot, and now his reputation, which has changed, was the polar opposite. Cairo's hero, the youngest ranker, and the genius swordsman who defeated Butler, it didn't make sense. If Rodwell Dimitri had done this, he might have simply accepted it, but this was Roman. Brother Roman was able to change. Then why am I? Why am I still pathetic? Maybe Lauren once thought that he was better than Roman. It was okay to fall behind because there was the trash of the Dmitri family behind him, but he was now the pathetic underdog. Ah. Tatak. He swung the sword. His arms were trembling, yet he forced them to move. Then. Wish. He lost his balance and fell to the ground. Lauren Dmitri lay down as he gulped down his cries while looking up at the darkened sky. This isn't how it was supposed to be. The third son of Dmitri was the trash that William Castro talked about. His brothers were working to prove their worth, and the Dmitri family was ignored and looked down on only because of him. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he covered his face with his arms. No one was watching, but he didn't want to show his crying face. But. What are you doing here? He heard a familiar yet unfamiliar voice. Lauren Dmitri raised his head and saw his brother, who looked different from what he remembered. There was no need to explain the circumstances. He was the typical figure of a loser. Roman said with no warmth in his voice, "I heard from Hans that you had come to find me. If you have something to say it now." "Why did you come?" Roman stopped himself from saying that. Although Hans asked out of concern and was aware of the child being bullied in the academy, he didn't say anything about it. He just looked at Lauren Dmitri and waited. He didn't want to give his brother a chance to question him, so he answered, "It was nothing." Lauren avoided his gaze. The situation was embarrassing for him. His face flushed red when he thought Roman had watched him as he struggled to overcome reality. What if he had asked in a friendly tone? Lauren might have confided in his emotions. However, the brother he met after a long time was very different and showed no affection for him. So he couldn't be honest and decided to pass the time. Lauren couldn't even raise his head, fearing that tears would fall and make a spectacle of himself in front of Roman. Pathetic boy. Roman took a step back as he spat those words. He had no intention of helping Lauren. At the sight of Roman, who was about to leave, Lauren regretted it, and for a moment, without even thinking about it, Lauren shouted, "Brother Roman!" Pathetic. That word pierced like a dagger because Roman was once in the same situation as him. "I will tell you why I came to see you, brother. I will tell you everything." He finally mustered up some courage to reveal his shameful condition. That was it. Roman stopped walking and looked at Lauren. Chapter 119. While staying in the capital. Part 3. Lauren said, "I accidentally overheard people talking about the rumors that brother defeated the Hector kingdom and saved the southern front. I didn't quite believe it at first. The brother I remember wasn't interested in swordsmanship, and in the first place, even if he were asked to go for military duty, he would avoid it. Was it a year ago? It wasn't that old of a memory. Roman contacted Lauren and asked if the youngest could take the burden of the family in the place of the eldest, and he felt a bit sad then. Actually, other noble families did not entrust their eldest sons with military duty. If they had the power, they would have solved the problem or compelled another brother, such as a second son, to replace him. But Baron Romero pushed Roman out of it. Rodwell was selected as the successor, hoping that Roman, who was creating trouble for the family, would come to his senses once he got enlisted in the army. Because of this, Roman Dmitri stopped talking to Rodwell and complained to Lauren about it. Pathetic older brother. He wasn't the type of brother whom Lauren could brag about like Rodwell, but he didn't think too badly of Roman, who was in a similar situation as himself. As they were originally commoners, Roman and Lauren Dmitri had to grow up with fierce competition against Rodwell, who was a strong competitor. So Lauren thought he understood why Roman had to go on military duty instead. But while we didn't meet, you changed. The Roman Dmitri, who was in a similar situation to me, has disappeared and been reborn into a new being called Kairos. Hero. How can you be this different? I am aware of my brother and myself. It is well known that people from the outskirts do not have the same talent as Brother Rodwell and do not achieve success. At the very least, my brother and I were the types of people who couldn't live up to the expectations of those around us. He found it hard to talk about his feelings for the first time. The emotions that he had bottled up for a long time overflowed. I am the shy kind. I followed my brother Rodwell to the capital to live up to my father's expectations, but I couldn't do anything until he was promoted to Class S, and to be honest, I still don't understand what mana is. Others have good mana and get promoted in a month or two, but as I get older and take more classes, I move to Class D, and I don't know when I will be pushed to Class E. He cried. He couldn't tell this truth at home, and he looked at Roman with earnest eyes. So I came to meet my brother. My brother was in the same situation as me. How did you become stronger than me? I also want to be a son that my father is proud of. Always pretending to be fine and pretending to be good, it isn't that I am forced to smile, but I really want to show some results. Finally, he couldn't stop crying. He cried with his head bowed and shoulders dropping in a sorrowful manner. It was a look that even the original Roman wouldn't have expected. The people in Lauren Dimitri's family thought he was doing well in the capital, just like his brother Rodwell. Of course, his progress wasn't as great as that of his brother Rodwell, but unlike Roman, who was a fool, he attended the classes diligently. But the truth was different. Lauren knew how his father, Baron Romero, was having a hard time with Roman Dimitri, so Lauren never said anything. He hated how he had to live so hard, but he thought that one problem child was enough in a family. The conversation couldn't go any longer, as he didn't stop crying. Roman said nothing as he continued to watch him cry to the point where he couldn't breathe. Just like that, until Lauren calmed down, Roman just looked at Lauren and waited for him to stop crying. Lauren cried for a long time. He was a sensitive child. He was still 18 years old and wasn't ready to handle the weight of reality. How should I treat Lauren? There was no ill feeling. It wasn't that he had any bad memories of Lauren, but then, the second son, Rodwell, wasn't bad either. A new life. Even though he took over Roman Dimitri's life, Roman didn't want to keep the same kinds of relationships. The original Roman had a lot of karma. Everyone that Roman met displayed a hostile attitude toward him, and he was shown hatred despite not doing anything. Despite this, he didn't look at them with prejudiced eyes. Baron Romero, who had given up on his eldest son after being disappointed over and over again, became his biggest fan. Chris, who despised Roman, tried to attack him in front of the Baron, but now he was so loyal that he would jump into the fire pit if Roman ordered it. Most of the people he met were like that. Besides these two, many others, like the blacksmith and more, who were hostile to him at first, now shared a tight-knit bond. He thought the opposite. Just as other people accepted his new self, he didn't discriminate against the new relationship they now had. I have no feelings for Lauren. If he distanced himself from me, I wouldn't even consider him good as a swordsman or even as a sibling. The same goes for Rodwell. The identity of the eldest and second son is always complicated, but even so, it isn't good to be hostile to Rodwell. Lauren or Rodwell, my evaluation of them will be based on my own experience and not on the original memories. This was Roman's way of living a new life. It was a new standard. Since this life wasn't originally his, Roman showed tolerance for accepting a new life. Lauren. Yes? He called his sibling. Still, he had no affection for him. Just because he had gone through the same hardships as Roman, there was no need to give him special care. But I don't want to see people with the same last name as I ignored. That would undermine the reputation of the family and mine. You said you were wondering how I got to where I am. If you want an answer, prove that you are worthy of knowing. I heard that there would be a swordsmanship test soon. In that test, show what happens when one ignores the name Lauren Dimitri. For once, he gave him a chance. Unlike in his previous life, where his siblings were killed for having the same last name, Roman gave Lauren a chance. It was up to him now. If he proved himself, he would accept him as his brother. But if he didn't, there would not be many opportunities to talk to Roman in the future. The day was bright, and Lauren's eyes were swollen. His face was messed up because he had cried for a long time, and his mind had been full of complicated thoughts since last night. I was told to prove myself if I want an answer. It was strange. Lauren felt brave when he heard those words. All this while, he felt like he was wandering in this endless open sea, but then a person who had overcome it offered to tell him the way out. Then what was there to be afraid of? He had to prove his qualifications. His brother, who was admired by the people of the Cairo kingdom, would tell him how to change. His head felt clear. It had been a long time since he had felt this way. Even though he didn't get any answers, his mind felt at peace. The time had come for the swordsmanship test. The students gathered at the training ground, and the professor looked at their faces before proceeding with the test. "I'm starting the test right now." First, the students, who were called one after another, competed against each other. Happiness was divided. Some rejoiced, and some were saddened. How much time had passed before the professor turned to Lauren? "Lauren." He got up and, "William." He faced his opponent. Even as William Castro got up with a smile, Lauren didn't feel the least bit anxious. "Huh. Life sure is funny to be put up against you again." William had a conversation with his friends before the test. They didn't know who was going to fight Lauren, but it meant that they would get a free pass to Class C. And now William faced Lauren. It wasn't fun to see him not answering, but it was fine. "I will make sure you are done for good this time." The Castro family was the elite of the central government. William Castro's father was a supporter of nobles, and having lived in the capital from a young age, he had been elite. There was something his father always said. It was that a person had a limit since birth, and their use was determined based on where they were born. Hearing those words, William Castro felt disgusted at the Dimitri family. The Cairo Royal Academy was a place for the elite. Then what was this son of a commoner born family doing here as his classmate? He could appreciate someone talented like Rodwell, but not Lauren. It feels disgusting. This time he decided to send Lauren back home. The professor said, "The evaluation criteria for the test isn't victory or defeat. We will evaluate how well the teachings have melted into your body, so refrain from making extreme attacks. Now then, I will start the test." Beep. The signal was given. As soon as the test started, William Castro aimed at him, and there was no time to think. Lauren couldn't even respond to normal attacks, so he decided to end this with a bold move. Tack. Quack. The attack was blocked. Lauren raised his sword. His expression was distorted due to the overwhelming physical difference. Even though he could block the attack, it wasn't easy for his body to take in the shock of the attack. William Castro didn't stop. He continued to attack, and Lauren got pushed. Tack. 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 Cowardly bastard. It was an overwhelming power. There was no way Lauren, the weakest person here, could handle William's attack. This was expected. Not once did he fight back. William Castro backed his opponent into a corner and immediately saw that Lauren's stance was off. "It is over." His chest was open. He was thinking of hitting him down. If any bones were broken, Lauren wouldn't think about staying in the academy any longer. Hook. He lowered his sword. And it was then that Lauren tilted his head forward. Even though the wooden sword would hit his head at this rate, he looked up at William Castro with determined eyes. Lauren clenched his teeth at the tense situation. Pack. The wooden sword struck him. Even though he turned his head slightly to avoid it, blood appeared in his shock-filled eyes. At the same time, tack. Lauren managed to hit William Castro in the jaw.